Eldrazi are a pretty interesting concept within the story of Magic, and so it's unsurprising that many people, myself included, have wanted to build a commander deck around them. And today that's what I'm going to do, show off a commander deck I've been playing and tuning for many years and that has become my signature deck, Mono White Eldrazi. For a real Eldrazi deck you really want the commander to be on theme, and luckily there are 5 pretty obvious choices for this, since unfortunately original Emrakul can't come to the party for commander, which is fair because she's pretty busted. But colourless commander decks can really restrict how your deck works, since you lack good choices for removal and card draw, and it basically just becomes a race to drop your commander as quickly as possible. So how about we add some colour to the deck? Some of the popular choices for Eldrazi are Animar Soul of Elements, who can give a massive casting cost reduction, or Dredar Archmage Eternal, who can cheat Eldrazi into play with a lower cost. But neither of these characters have much to do with Eldrazi within the story of Magic, so while they are strong, it's not really how I like to build tribal decks. There are, however, 2 legendary Eldrazi's that do have a colour, and they are going to be the commanders for today's deck, Gisela the Broken Blade and Bruna the Fading Light. While on the front side they are both just Angel Horrors, when melded together they become Brisela, Voice of Nightmares, and Eldrazi Angel, and my vote for the unofficial 4th Eldrazi Titan. Brisela, Voice of Nightmares is a 9/10 Eldrazi Angel with Flying, First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink. She can also make it so your opponents cannot cast spells with mana value 3 or less, a powerful ability in a format where most removal is low costed. Now while you can't place Brisela into your command zone, if she is created with either Gisela or Bruna as your commander, Brisela also acts as your commander and will inflict commander damage. While this could be considered a secret commander within the deck, if you're playing either of these angels, people will know exactly what you're trying to do, so it's not actually that much of a secret. So then we have a choice to make. What angel do we actually pick to be the commander? Gisela is a powerful 4/3 Angel Horror for 2 white with Flying, First Strike and Lifelink, while Bruna the Fading Light is a 5/7 Angel Horror for 5 white with Flying and Vigilance who, when cast, allows you to return an angel or human from your graveyard to the battlefield. For years I headed this deck using Bruna, as she would allow me to run a crazy Reanimator deck, bringing back Titans over and over and allowing me to mill Gisela into the graveyard and then cast Bruna to bring her out. This however has a fatal flaw, as soon as the table realises that you can just recur Brisela over and over by recasting your commander, they will absolutely team up against you and take you out of the game. Over time, as I moved the deck more and more towards the Eldrazi theme however, I realised how powerful Gisela was as the commander instead. With lots of Eldrazi in the deck, you really have a high curve for your creatures, and having that consistent 4-drop in the command zone is really powerful for a number of reasons. Gisela has both Flying and First Strike, making her great for stopping early attacks, and Lifelink can be really valuable to claw yourself back into the game if you do take early aggression. For that reason, Gisela has become the commander for this deck, and will be the commander we use today for this. Unlike most of the deck techs we do on this channel, this is not a budget deck, so instead I have some pretty firm rules to make sure this deck stays fun and not oppressive. Number 1, this is a tribal deck, so only Eldrazi themed creatures are allowed. There are a lot of good white creatures that would absolutely fit into this deck, but we're building to a theme so they can't make it in. For the rest of the type of spells, such as enchantments, sorceries, etc., they're open season, it's only the creatures we're limiting the theme with. Number 2, Eldrazi are known for one specific ability which is really unfun to face, and that's called Annihilator. Yeah, you heard me, no creatures in this deck have the Annihilator ability because that is straight up just not a fun mechanic to play in Commander. I've had this rule in the deck since day one, and most people really do appreciate knowing the game isn't going to get ruined by it. And lastly, no fast mana. This deck would obviously be much stronger if I ran things like Moxes or Mana Crypt and such, but I'm restricting the power of this deck to fit in with mid-power games at my LGS. So no fast mana will be included. With that out of the way, let's get to the deck. First up, let's talk Eldrazi. We have Endless One, Eldrazi Mimic, Eldrazi Displacer, Matter Reshaper, Thought-Knot Seer, Warden of Geometries, Kozilek's Channeler, Reality Smasher, Conduit of Ruin, Endbringer, Oblivion Sower, Deceiver of Form, Desolation Twin, and Void Winnower. And then we have the 3 Titans themselves, Kozilek the Great Distortion, Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, and Emrakul the Promised End. Since we don't have any Annihilator in this deck, we can't run the original 2 Titans from Zendikar, but that's fine, because even if we did, our top end would be way too heavy with them by that point. All 3 of these Titans are a powerhouse on their own. Ulamog is indestructible and will quickly destroy an opponent's library. Kozilek can let us refill our hand in the mid-game, and Emrakul can finish off players by taking control of them for a turn, and she's also a 13/13 with flying, which tends to kill pretty quickly. Lastly, we have a couple of Transform Eldrazi's with Lone Rider, Extraditor of Sin, and of course Bruna the Fading Light, so we can meld for Brisela. And we have one non-Eldrazi creature in the deck, and that is Desperate Sentry, who makes a 3/2 Eldrazi token when she dies. Sadly, the addition of white doesn't really give us access to many more Eldrazi, but we do have enough here to make the tribe work, and the big hitters at the end do give us some game-winning punch. Moving on to the other important categories in the deck, let's talk about the ramp. For that, we have Sol Ring, Wayfarer's Bauble, Arcane Signet, Dowsing Dagger, Mind Stone, Sword of the Animist, Archaeomancer's Map, Basalt Monolith, Cryptolith Fragment, Sword of Hearth and Home, Forsaken Monument, Monologue Tax, Smothering Tithe, Ugin the Ineffable, and Myriad Landscape. As you'd expect for an Eldrazi deck, we have a lot of ramp. But also note we run quite a few equipment-based ramp with Dowsing Dagger, Sword of the Animist, and Sword of Hearth and Home. This is one of the biggest benefits of having Gisela as our commander instead of Bruna, as we can use the equipment to repeatedly ramp by attacking with Gisela. I've really come around to using equipment-based ramp like this on my commanders that are low cost and have evasion like flying or such, as they can pay back a lot more over time than a simple mana rock does. You'll also notice we have the Basalt Monolith and Forsaken Monument combo in the deck, allowing us to generate infinite colourless mana when they are both out. While we don't actually have many ways to use this mana, it can let us play out most of our hand, and we will come back to these combos a little bit later in the video. Moving on to our draw effects, and the mono-white curse is very apparent. We have Endbringer, Kozilek the Great Distortion, Ugin the Ineffable, Skullclamp, Sensei's Dividing Top, Mystic Forge, Bonder's Enclave, and War Room. At times this deck can struggle with drawing cards, but as long as we can find a way to get an extra card or two through lands or artifacts, it does function well enough to at least give us options when playing and avoid the dreaded top deck situation. In order to help with that consistency, we do run a number of tutors. Steelshaper's Gift, Open the Armory, Call the Gatewatch, Search for Glory, Enlightened Tutor, Heirloom Blade, Eye of Ugin, Inventor's Fair, and Sanctum of Ugin. Search for Glory is one of my favourite new tutors from last year, and I really think people undervalue how good it is. In a deck like this, it can help us find Bruna for melding, one of our Titans to cast, one of the Ugins if we need it, legendary ramp pieces, such as the equipment, or even land drops. When built around in a deck like this, it really gives you a wide range of versatility. Another odd inclusion is Heirloom Blade, which on the surface is not actually a tutor. However, if we put this on Gisela and she dies, there is only one other horror or angel in the deck, which is Bruna, allowing us to essentially tutor her into hand. It also helps to keep us in Eldrazi if they are being removed, as there's nothing worse for our opponents than getting rid of a Kozilek, only to then give us an Ulamog. Moving on to removal, we have a Path to Exile, Swords to Plowshares, Warping Whale, Generous Gift, Austere Command, All is Dust, Undo Inversion, Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, Ugin the Ineffable, and Ugin the Spirit Dragon. We also have Scavenger Grounds and Soulguide Lantern to help deal with graveyards. Our removal is a bit expensive mana-wise, but most of it is either one-sided, such as with All is Dust, or comes with other upsides like with Ugin or Ulamog. This is the biggest benefit of having white cards in the deck over a colourless commander however, the range of removal it gives us. We have targeted removal and board wipes, both can help us deal and get to the late game, where our ramp will hopefully get us into the threats we want. Since we're playing out a whole bunch of threats onto the board, we do need to run some protection for them. And for that we have Warping Whale to counter sorceries, Not of This World to protect our Titans, Flawless Maneuver to stop board wipes, and Swiftfoot Boots for hexproof and haste. The reason I go for Swiftfoot Boots over Lightning Greaves in this deck is because of all the other equipment this is running. I don't want to be sliding around a Lightning Greaves to suit a creature up, I need the protection to stick. But of course our protection won't always work, and when our threats are removed we do need some ways to get them back. In particular we want to recur our creatures to hand so we can get their cast effects again, so our recursion is built around that. We are running Remember the Fallen, Savine's Reclamation, Reinforcements, Buried Ruin, Emiria the Sky Ruin, Hall of Heliod's Generosity, Haven of the Spirit Dragon, Mistveiled Plains, and Elixir of Immortality. Elixir has been a more recent addition to this deck and is mainly there to help us against mill-based strategies. We don't have a lot of ways to access cards in our graveyard, so being able to shuffle the whole lot back into our library is really important for longer games. Since we are primarily a combat-based deck, we also have some equipment and buffs to help our creatures deal a bit more punch. These include Shadow Spear for lifelink and trample, Blackblade Reforged to make our commander huge, Swiftfoot Boots for haste, Duelist Heritage to give double strike, and Hall of the Bandit Lord to also give haste. Stacking just a few of these onto a single creature can really let us hit much harder and finish players off in the game. The land base for this deck is mostly focused around utility lands, as most of the deck is colourless. I've already mentioned a lot of them, so here I'll just go over the ones that don't fit into any of the other categories. Arcane Lighthouse can help remove protection, Cathedral War to make our commander a bit bigger, Eldrazi Temple to get some extra mana, High Market for a sack outlet, Reliquary Tower in case we draw lots of cards, Ruins of Oran Reef for flavour, Shrine of the Forsaken Gods for extra mana, and Tectonic Edge to deal with lands. Along with these we have 12 basic planes to help make white mana. While this does seem rather low, it is rare that I get screwed by a lack of white mana, as the deck will function fine as long as you can get at least 2 sources within the first 4 turns. After that, you should have enough to play almost any white spell that you draw. So that's the deck. Let's talk about how it plays. First up, despite being a creature swingy deck, it does still have some infinite combos in it. Of course it does, it's a deck I've made. First up, with Ugin the Ineffable, Sensei's Divining Top, and Mystic Forge, we can draw out our entire library and play out any colourless 1 or 2 mana value spells for free. But drawing our entire library isn't actually that good unless we can do something with it. So, with an untapped Basalt Monolith and Forsaken Monument out, we can generate infinite colourless mana. So if we've drawn our entire library and kept enough mana up, this can let us play out basically everything we draw, but even without having drawn our entire library, we've still got some expensive creatures in this deck, so having infinite mana on an earlier turn is a great way to get them out sooner. But say we have drawn our library and now we have infinite mana to use. How do we actually end the game with it? For that, we have Eldrazi Displacer and Thought-Knot Seer. By using that mana to infinitely flicker Thought-Knot Seer, we can force our opponents to draw and then exile their entire library. The best part is this is almost impossible to stop, since even if we happen to draw them into some removal that they could use to get rid of one of our pieces, we can simply put more draw triggers on top of their removal and draw them out before it can resolve. But that combo isn't really the game plan for this deck, and I've only pulled that sequence off a couple of times in the years that I've been playing it. The real game plan is to resolve big Eldrazi and hit people really hard with them. Gisela can regularly kill with commander damage if we put a Blackblade or such on her, and the Titans get really dangerous if you give them trample or protection. The deck looks to ramp hard and control the board with removal, before dropping in threat after threat for the table to deal with. It certainly can't 1v3 a table, so the trick is to hold your threats until the right moment to then start killing off opponents. This can take some practice to get good at, but if you're used to playing decks like this where you're ramping into big threats, you should be able to handle this fairly easily. So that's my take on a popular tribe with a commander you should really consider if you want to build an Eldrazi deck. Neither Gisela or Bruna are listed as Eldrazi themed commanders on EDH Rec, and I think that's a real shame. I've been playing this version of a deck for many years and I don't intend to stop anytime soon. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again next time.